Brainstorm, brainstorm, brainstorm. What if you were a fly on the wall and you were in the room with four of the world's greatest martial arts coaches, instructors, founders? They were representatives of some particular art and they made that art famous. They made themselves famous. You hear them talk about how to close the gap or how to manage the gap. We're talking about fighting in the box, fighting in the phone booth. It doesn't matter if we're talking about elbows and knees or takedowns. We're talking about how do we get there? How do we maintain it? How do we seek our path? In that room is one of the founders of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, Helio Gracie, boxing legend, Emanuel Stewart, wrestling legend, Dan Gable, and founder of Jeet Kune Do, Bruce Lee. How would each one of these men approach managing the gap, and what recommendations would they give you to get there, maintain it, or to defend against it? I think the conversation opens up with Helio Gracie, and I think Helio will remind us all of UFC number 1 with Hoist, where he used the basic kick to distract the opponent and then close the gap. And one of the things you notice when Hoist closes that gap, the main objective is to be close to his opponent, because at that point he was going to let his grappling skills take over. Because unlike wrestling, he's not there to simply hold on. He's not there to simply to pin the guy. He is there to finish. So it didn't matter to Hoist how he made that entry, how he got there. And if you look at several of his fights over the years, he's managed to get there in the standing position. He's managed to get there in the bottom position. He's managed to get there in the top position. He just wanted to get close. And that, to me, is the primary theme that Helio would be telling you. It's all about getting close. That you have to remember, you're not trying to take any damage while you get there. And I think that becomes principles that you can work by even in today's time, even in a mixed martial arts fight. How do I get close to my opponent without taking any real damage, and then get to the true path that I'm seeking, whether that be making it a close fight, infighting game, or take him down? It doesn't matter. But I think that's how Helio starts the conversation. I think that's the recommendation that he goes with, and he reminds us to look at Hoist's method from UFC 1. I think next up is Emanuel Stewart, and I think he makes reference to a fighter, Thomas Hitman Hearns, and the fight would be when Hearns fought Roberto Duran. And we know that Duran had incredible punching power. We wouldn't want our fighter to mix it up and run the risk of getting hurt when he had such an obvious advantage in the height and the reach. I think Roberto was about 5'7", 5'8", and Hearns was about 6 feet, 6'1", somewhere in there. And if you're the taller guy with the longer reach, then the only thing you really want to do in the gap is cross it to land and get back out to manage it at long distance. And if you look at that fight, I'm pretty sure that that's what Emanuel must have instructed Thomas to do, because that's exactly what he did. He stayed on the outside, pumping the jab, using angular footwork to avoid any straight line attack in return from Duran. He also used a sequence of feints and double ups inside. And then when he did, say get Duran stuck on the ropes or backed him up, he threw punches in bunches, as they say. He let his hands go. He threw in combination. That was one of the secrets to how he managed to get that win. I think it was in 2 rounds, and he finished him off. I think the principles are the same, is that with this particular guy, with his punching power in a Duran, you stay on the outside, so you take minimum to no damage, and then you maximize your strengths and inflict the most damage. Then we come to Bruce Lee. So how does Bruce Lee manage the gap, close the gap? I think you take a Bruce Lee or a proficient JKD practitioner, and I think they talk about staying on the inside, staying in that preferred trapping range where you are basically infighting, working destructions, throwing elbows and knees, even the headbutt. I think a good example of this would be from the Dan Inosanto lineage would be Paul Vunak. And I think the primary strategy would have been from how do you train to stay in the gap? How do you train to stay here and unleash attack after attack from multiple angles? And I think Vunak has put out a series of videotapes over the years that a lot of people kind of give a lot of credit to in terms of being able to work in the trapping range. I think there's a lot there that you can take from, and not to draw on the literal technique, but to draw from those principles. Then we have Dan Gable, and I think that what Dan Gable shows you is the art of hand fighting, hand control, and head positioning. And I think that what Dan does is he'll talk about this from an offensive and defensive positioning. He's very similar to the Gracies, is that when he gets in, it is to get you responding to him. He's going to take you down. But just like the Gracies, when he gets you there, he's going to keep you there. Dan isn't looking to have you return back to your feet. So one of the things you'll notice in the way he approaches the gap or fighting in the clinch is that he's not in a hurry. If you compare him to Saunderson tends to go high and low a lot, looking for that ankle peg, knee tap, leg snatch, whereas Dan tends to favor the hand control, favor the pummeling, favor the head control a lot more. But then when he goes, both of those guys are the same. Once they get you on the ground, that's where they're going to keep you as long as they can. If we look at these concepts and this fantasy roundtable from the perspective of today's MMA, you can actually see some of these concepts being played out. You take a John Jones who utilizes the long side kick to the knee, can be credited back to a JKD. He uses it to maintain the range and stay long. Then we can look at the way wrestlers have classically utilized boxing attacks to move forward to either push their opponents up against the cage, mix in a threat of the takedown to give them the edge in striking at times. I think you can actually combine these elements in today's mixed martial arts because athletes are a little bit more athletic and there's a lot more cross training, and the coaches from different styles now are a bit more technical. They're technical in the sense that they understand their base art, and they're technical in the sense that they understand what the goal is in an MMA fight.